Hey up, right, as promised, the full review of the YOSHIMURA GP Magnum exhaust can fitted to the Honda GB350s. Now, in a way, I knew that my choice of exhaust silencer for this bike was going to be a controversial one with some people, and I knew why. But I got some quite nasty comments from some people in last Friday's video when I fitted it, saying that it doesn't suit the bike, it's totally wrong for a modern classic. Well, let's just talk about that for a moment. This is Honda's most recent excursion into the modern classic market, and it's based on sort of several of their models, really, ranging through the 1970s to the beginning of the 1980s. And for the past 20 years or so, the modern classic sort of segment of the market has concentrated on motorcycle models mainly from the 1950s through the 1960s. And I've been aware of this for quite some time, which is partly why I chose the GB350s. This has created a sort of a Groundhog Day effect with people, where when you say modern classic motorcycle, they expect something styled on something from the 50s or the 60s, and when you show them something sort of circa 1970, early 1980, something in the brains doesn't compute. Now, of course, Honda isn't the only motorcycle manufacturer that's done this. Triumph have been doing it for over 20 years with the various Bonneville models, the Street Twin, that kind of thing, the new 400s. I would argue that BSA have done the same with the Bantam. So has Royal Enfield with some models like the Shotgun and the Hunter. So for some people, when they're shown video or photographs of this particular class of modern classic, because it doesn't have pea-shooter exhausts and deeply balanced mudguards, they don't recognise it as a modern classic motorcycle. And I'm going to be completely honest about it, that's more to do with their mindset than reality. By the end of the 1960s, and certainly by the 1970s, no motorcycle manufacturer was turning out bikes with pea-shooter exhausts on them. They usually had some sort of cheap variation of a megaphone silencer fitted, pretty similar to the one that this Honda had when I received it. Much the same as the first 3 or 4 Japanese motorcycles that I bought in the very early 1980s. But if you were a motorcyclist then, you'll know that you were lucky if you got 3 years out of these exhausts before they rotted through, so you would replace it. The original equipment from the manufacturer was extortionately expensive, so you'd go for an aftermarket exhaust. And Yoshimura, certainly by the very beginning of 1980, was a leading brand, with a racetrack proven pedigree and a reputation for quality, which I have to say then as now is pretty much unravelled. This GP Magnum exhaust is based on one of Yoshimura's vintage models from the early 1980s, so it is absolutely period correct for this class of modern classic motorcycle. And the fact that some people see it as too modern, I think, is a testament to the success of this type of exhaust. You know, this design was so good, it is still being used today. And everyone, and I mean everyone, everybody and the dog and the dog's hairdresser ever since has copied this design in an attempt to cash in on Yoshimura's success. Whenever you see an exhaust silencer of this generic design, you're looking at a Yoshimura copy, whether it be Micron or Akrapovic, or even motorcycle manufacturers that are turning out their own sort of version of these pipes. They're all cashing in on Yoshimura's success that was born during the 1960s through a unique collaboration between Pop Yoshimura and the Honda racing team, later joining with other manufacturers, Suzuki, Yamaha and Kawasaki. In fact, I think Kawasaki even had a Yoshimura special edition. I think it was a 750, I'm not sure. Now, everyone's entitled to their opinions as far as I'm concerned, as long as they're polite about it. A lot of people weren't polite about it, but make no mistake, this Yoshimura pipe is absolutely period correct for this type of modern classic motorcycle, and I've got nothing more to say on the matter. Now, the first thing that I want to talk about regarding this exhaust is the sort of practical features, the things that it's added to my motorcycle experience that I was struggling with a little bit with the stock exhaust. For a start, the stock exhaust is matte black painted. You all know that I hate it. I know that a lot of you hate matte black paintwork on exhaust systems. It looks nasty and then just continues to get nastier as it ages. We've got rid of that with this high quality stainless steel exhaust. Now, the other thing, and this is a biggie for me, is the fact that the original exhaust did interfere somewhat with your ability to put luggage on your bike. Most of us need luggage. I certainly do. And that original upswept exhaust severely limited clearance for a right hand bag. Now, Honda's way around this is to supply owners with their original bags a small bag for the exhaust side and a larger bag for the non-exhaust side. Now, it doesn't look exactly right. It serves a purpose, but it, again, it's limiting the customer. It's limiting the rider. Now, when I first spotted the Yoshimura exhaust, I spent hours looking at different photographs and comparing them with and without the exhaust to try and work out whether the Yoshimura pipe hung a little bit lower or not. And it was a bit of a leap of faith. That was one of the reasons I bought this exhaust. It was a bit of a leap of faith as to whether it would solve the issue or not. Now, the original pipe did give me just enough clearance, although I did have to be careful not to put anything too heavy in the right hand bag. The main issue, though, was that the the muzzle of the exhaust, if you like, pointed sort of up at an angle, and it was coating the rear corner of the bag with black exhaust residue, which is not the end of the world, but it's not ideal either. Now, the Yoshimura solves all of these problems. For a start, it's a slightly shorter pipe, so it has effectively doubled the gap between these fairly large Hepco and Becker bags and the exhaust itself, which is much safer and offers the rider a lot more flexibility when it comes to choosing luggage for the bike. You also don't have to do that silly sort of small bag on one side, large bag on the other trick to make it all work. The other thing is the exhaust muzzle itself emits exhaust fumes horizontally to the road. They're not aimed up at the bag. So soiling your precious bags with combustion materials through the exhaust is likely to be far less of a problem. The other thing is, this exhaust seems to run a lot cooler than the OEM exhaust, especially the sort of rear half of the silencer, which I can comfortably place my hands on after a long ride. They're warm, but they're not hot. So you should be able to safely use larger bags made from sort of heat-sensitive man-made materials without any issues. On the whole, this exhaust opens up the sort of whole world of carrying luggage substantially from the original specification of this bike. Now, we're going to finish this video off with a bit of a flyby to let you know what the exhaust sounds like, but what is most important is, of course, performance. Yoshimura state, although they don't give any figures, that this exhaust noticeably improves torque and horsepower, and I've got to say they're not lying. For a start, the engine runs much better and much smoother since I fitted this exhaust. Those of you that own this bike will know that it starts off with a fast idle and that it transitions into the normal idle as the bike warms up. And it's a little bit glitchy at times. It almost feels like it's going to stall. That's gone completely. It's just a transition from fast to slow with no glitching whatsoever. Also, on the overrun, the OEM exhaust occasionally, not always, pops on the overrun, especially at low speeds. That's gone completely as well. So obviously Yoshimura have really worked out the design of this pipe really well to enhance the effects of the fueling that the bike has when it leaves the factory. No remapping is required when you fit this exhaust. That's a thing of the past. That sort of ended for all motorcycle models around about 2016. It's very much out of date thinking, and this bike runs perfectly from the first push of the starter. As I've said, Yoshimura haven't published any figures for performance, horsepower and torque. But what I would say is it's greatly enhanced the mid-range on the engine. It's noticeably woken this little motorcycle up. Now, second, third and fourth gear, the bike has a lot more go. You can feel there's a lot more torque there. What I feel it's probably done is made that torque and horsepower available a little bit earlier than was possible with the stock exhaust. As with all modern 350s, you adjust the throttle and then you sort of wait for the bike to catch up. That's not as pronounced as it used to be with this exhaust. It really has made a big noticeable difference. The bike isn't affected quite as badly by inclines and headwinds as it used to be, and I'm not saying that this exhaust has turned the Honda 350 into a super bike. It hasn't, but it has made the bike much more versatile than it was before. It's also enhanced the flexibility of fifth gear. I know a lot of people refer to it as an overdrive. I don't really see it that way. It's more of an economy gear, not really an overdrive. Now, it was possible to accelerate slowly from 40 miles an hour in fifth if you weren't in a hurry. It will actually take it from about 35 now, and the power comes on in fifth gear again a little bit earlier than it used to before. You can quickly get up to 60 or 70 miles an hour far quicker than you could before. Not record braking speeds, but again, the whole thing has been enhanced, and there's a lot more flexibility and versatility in fifth gear than there was before. Now, when it comes down to fuel consumption, I can't really give you any figures on that. I've not been riding the bike long enough. I've mainly been sort of looking to see what enhancements are available with this exhaust more than anything else. I'll perhaps report on that at a later date. Now, exhaust sound. Now, if I'm totally honest, I can't tell an awful lot of difference. The Yoshimura possibly gives a slightly more, manly baritone sort of tone than the stock exhaust did. But to me, initially, this exhaust actually sounded a little bit quieter than the stock exhaust. Now, I think it's more to do with the direction that the exhaust fumes or exhaust sound is projected than the actual decibels coming out of it. As I say, it tends to direct exhaust fumes and so exhaust sound directly away from the back of the bike rather than slightly up and away. So you're losing, from a rider's perspective, some of the sound. It does sound a little bit quieter. Don't get me wrong, you can still hear it, but it does sound slightly quieter than the stock exhaust. However, when you're standing behind the bike, there's no noticeable difference as far as I can tell. Oh, right, we're going to finish off with a flyby, but weight saving. One or two people have asked me about this. I'm not an anorak, I didn't weigh the two silencers to see what the difference was, but I did gauge that the Yoshimura, when I was handling both exhausts, weighs about half as much as the stock exhaust, if that helps. Right, so here we are at my favourite S-bend, a flyby and then a return journey. Now, I use this S-bend because it gives a really good test of the engine with down changes and then up changes as you're coming out. So it gives you sort of the best of both worlds when it comes to the sound of the engine as you respond to the bends in an attempt to keep the speed up. Now, I come in hot at 50 miles an hour in 5th gear. 2 down changes, I think, into 3rd, then accelerator way changing back up towards 5th. And before anybody complains, I did my best. I had a windsock fitted to the camera. I also had the electronic wind remover thing activated. We've got north winds blowing in over the North Sea. It does play havoc with the sound. Here we go. Now, this is the problem when you use the mechanical and electronic wind filters. It tends to knock the gain down an awful lot. I've actually whacked the volume up full here. It might help if you turn your device's volume up as well. It's not as quiet as this in real life. So there you have it, and I've got to say, this exhaust has been a bit of a head turner. You know, there's a world of difference between a generic exhaust casing with a generic baffle inside it that allows the bike to work reasonably well, and a full exhaust silencer that's been designed by the leading company in the field of making exhausts, Yoshimura in this case, to provide something that adds a sort of excellence to the GB350s's performance. As I've said, I can't tell an awful lot of difference in sound. You know, that slight quietness that I detected when I first started riding the bike, I think is more to do with the direction that the sound has been emitted than the actual volume itself. But, you know, if you can afford it, this is a very worthwhile addition to the GB350s. I don't regret it for a moment. Money well spent as far as I'm concerned. Once again, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this and my other videos, and in doing so helping to support this channel. I really do appreciate it. I'd also appreciate it if you would leave a like and consider becoming a subscriber to this channel if you haven't done so already. There are other ways that you can help me via my Patreon page or via PayPal donations, or you can just use the super thanks button down below. Not essential, but either way it is appreciated. I will of course be back on Friday, so until then please ride safely and I'll see you soon.